Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching well over 1,000 comedians for nearly 50 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. It's Mr. Danny Walsh. Yay!
Hello, thanks for
Hi.
having me, Rich.
It's my pleasure. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm good.
Enjoying the weather.
Very eager. I am enjoying the weather. Yeah, thought I'd be
Glorious.
outside for the
I don't know what I'm doing
yeah.
inside. Anyway, thank you.
Blogging. You're blogging.
Blogging, of course. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm really looking forward to talking to you. It's going to last about 45 minutes to an hour. It's all about your comedy career. And we're going to go right back to the start. And if you can tell me, please, how did you become a comedian in the first place?
Sure. It was kind of by accident. I was at the time I was having a bit of support for drug and alcohol use.
Right.
It become a little bit problematic. So I was just getting some support, and then I was referred through to their education, training, employment department. And thankfully, I got a really wonderful worker who didn't just want to send me off to Tesco. She she really asked me, "What do you want to do? If you could do anything right now, what would you be doing?" And I said, "Comedy." So she found me a bunch of courses. She sent me off to City Lit for acting. Um, but there was also a clowning, like a finding your confidence, finding your funny workshop. And she sent me off to that. And I just took to it really naturally. I was like, I was really enjoying myself, and I took it as seriously as if it was, just an actual clown workshop, as if we were, like rehearsing for a show. I did a couple of those, and then my worker actually knew somebody who ran a gig, and she set up my first gig. And I never looked back really. And in a weird twist of events, somebody I work with now was the person who ran that clowning course back all those years ago.
Wow.
And so I've managed to tell her that like she had a long-term effect on at least one of the people that took part.
That's so brilliant. A friend of mine who I used to work with in a school, he was the head of department. He came into the office one day. My background's administration, and he said to me, "I want to be a comedian, and I'm going to do the comedy course." And it was at City Lit, and they had to perform a 5 minute set after they'd completed the course. And I went for the first 10 gigs he did. I was the friend who would go along to the pub for the 5 minutes, and I would laugh in all the right places. But he was
Yeah.
genuinely good. Is that how you started then? Did you go through the pub route where you had to take friends along and do fives and things like this?
My first, weirdly, my first 10 gigs were not bringer gigs, but I was I was lucky enough that people actually wanted to come.
Right.
So I kind of had someone with me at almost all of my first few gigs. I Yeah, I did a few of the circuits staples like Lions Den. I did quite
Yeah.
a few in the beginning. Um, and then eventually I found other gigs and they were bringers, and I realized that I'd used up all my bringers
Right.
on the non-bringer gigs. So kind of that's when you find the plus one network where you share with other comedians and you swap and things like that. But yeah, mostly started out in the pubs. I'm kind of still there really, Rich, if I'm honest.
Well, it's all a start. It's all experience. You just as an aside, you've got your finger on the camera. We can't quite see the picture. There we
Apologies.
go. That's
Apologies.
much better, my friend. But that's how a lot of them start through the pubs. I mean, I would go. The beauty of this blog is that it supports everybody. It's not just the big comedians that I've
Hmm.
seen. I'm a massive supporter of up and coming comedians who are just starting out. And as I say to a lot of them, it's all about experience. Can you remember your first ever gig and what was it like?
Yeah. So it's at a gig that I don't think is running anymore, but it
Right.
was upstairs at the Joker near
All right.
Angel.
Yeah, yeah.
It was Frank and Beans comedy. And yeah, it went a lot better than it should have, considering how unprepared I was. I had a lot of friends there. I think they did a lot of the work with the laughter of the audience. They kind of filled the room with laughter. But there were people that I didn't know that were enjoying it too.
Sure.
But I really, really enjoyed it so much that literally straight away I was like, I want to do that again. I want to do that. Could I
That's
somehow do that
wonderful. That's
today?
fantastic.
But yeah, I think it took another month for me to do my second gig.
That's so good though that you wanted to keep doing it. It's so good.
Yeah.
I infamously, I've told this to a lot of comedians. I've had a go at stand-up comedy myself, and I knew a promoter, and it was a Gong show, and he said, horrible. It couldn't be worse. And and he said, right, he said, you've got 3 minutes. They might gong you off. And so I walked out and I said, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, the ski jumper, but I can't see the resemblance myself. Now, of course, I'm his absolute double, this ski jumper that was at the Winter Olympics. Some old fella in the back just went, fuck off! And my confidence was like, oh my God, the promoter went, have another go. And a similar thing happened. And I thought, my calling is sitting in the audience, supporting everybody who can have a go at this. Never say never again, but I know,
No.
my friend, it's daunting.
I mean, it takes a lot of guts for your first show to be a gong show, I have to say.
maybe do it again. I don't know. Who knows? What do you like to talk about on stage? Have you got any specific themes, anything like that?
When I started out, it was mostly my kids and my ex-partner at the time. But now it's a little bit broader. It's kind of still I write what I know. I'm not a topical comedian, but the topics do kind of come up as references. But really I talk about kind of interpersonal relationships.
Right.
There's a lot about addiction in there, to do with both my job and a little bit about my parents and myself. There's being a parent, just kind of broad life in general. But again, I wouldn't say I was necessarily an observational comedian.
Right.
I just talk about the subject matter that observational comedians talk about.
I think
it's kind of a little bit silly, kind of slightly surreal takes on the real life stuff.
Yeah, I think if you talk about things that you know about, you're halfway home, because it's happened to you. It's very relatable, and you can also make it very, very funny. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, if you try and write about things that you don't know about, first of all, if you take it to the stage, you are just going to seem maybe a little bit ignorant, because people can tell when you're blagging it.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's what you know, half the battle's done, because you've got all these memories, you've got all these references, you've got the understanding of events that have occurred, the people that are in your life. So again, yeah, it's definitely half the battle's done for you.
Good answer, my friend. Tell me about your writing process for a routine or a show. Do you write notes? Do you record things? How do you go about writing the routines?
It's changed a lot, definitely. In the beginning, I kind of used to like word for word script stuff, but I found that I would, if I did improvise, or if there was a heckle, or if I just happened to lose my place, then I was completely lost. So that kind of evolved into more writing the premises and then knowing what you want to say around it. So being loose enough that you can improvise but still stick on subject. Um, every now and again, I will write like I'll have a joke that I write out word for word, but then I kind of whittle it down. I think the same process that a lot of people have. I
Sure.
will maybe write it out verbatim what I want to say, whittle it down to the most efficient amount of words, and then try and put the funny in afterwards. But a lot of the work actually gets done on stage. Often I'll bring a half-baked idea on stage. Well, something that I think is a full-on idea until you present it to an audience, and then you realize, oh wait, this needs setup and punchline. So yeah, a lot of the work gets done on stage, Rich, really.
It's interesting because I once did a training course and they said to me, you're going to teach someone something, anything, but you're going to teach someone how to do something. And I taught them my only card trick I knew, and I'd been doing this for years and years and years. And when I stood up, I forgot it. And it's the old adage: prepare to fail, fail to
Yeah,
prepare. And it's
yeah, yeah,
and it's good that you're like trying out ideas on stage. So you've got the seed of the idea, and then you can judge how the audiences are reacting. So
yeah.
you can do this. Yeah, fascinating. Ken Dodd infamously had a giggle map of Britain, so where he would go around the towns, he could work out which town was which jokes to tell in which town. It was
Yeah.
fascinating. What do you think makes a good comedian?
Trauma plus time. No,
That's not a bad answer.
no, it's I think that's a collective joke amongst comedians. So I definitely didn't come up with that. Um, I think I think having just a slightly different perception to everybody else.
Yeah,
To be able to notice something funny about what everyone else takes for granted. So even if people are doing observational stuff, sort of like imagine like your Peter Kay's, he's talking about things that are very everyday, but nobody thought to present them as jokes before.
yeah,
So he had that slightly different perception. Um, but then again, there's so many different styles. There are so many different ways of doing it. Not everybody's like copy and paste comedian. Everybody's very, very different on the circuit, and that's what I love to see.
yeah.
But yeah, just kind of, I think being slightly different from the norm, not too much, not too little, and generally, it's a willingness to be funny helps. Wanting to be funny.
You've
But
hit the nail.
some people,
I was going to say you've hit the nail on the head because I would sum it up in 3 words. You've got to be funny to kick off with, but you've also got to be endearing and very warm with an audience so they'll listen to you. And you've also got to be original. And
Mhm.
so you are a bit off kilter. And I think Peter Kay is a classic example of that. You want to go and have a beer with him afterwards. He's your best friend. He's relatable. He picks up on things that folk have in the normal lives, but he turns them into the funny. And you're so right about different styles of comedians. I love people who can just tell puns. I love comedians who have got a point, so there's a story, and I love nutcases as well. So there's a whole gamut of them all. So and that's the magic
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, that's a wonderful answer again, my friend. To date, what has been your best and worst ever gig? I can't ever imagine you having a bad gig because
Oh,
you're
they've
very
been
funny on stage.
there've been plenty, mate. You just happen to not have been there.
No.
I try and make sure bloggers only see the good ones, if I'm honest.
Well, whatever you want to answer, please tell me the good ones or the bad ones.
uh, my best one was I did like a half-hour preview
Right.
for my birthday once. I invited like 40 friends over. Um, I'd collected a lot of what I'd already done, and and wrote some new stuff. So I created the premise. The idea was Danny Issues was the name of the show. So that kind of it was loose enough. It gave me a premise, but it was loose enough that I could kind of throw anything in there as well. I wasn't stuck to any particular topic.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had Fitz Honga open with a 10. They loved him, and I had Laura Smith like hosting the whole night.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at the end, I came on and did the half-hour preview, and it's weird that like so many people that were there had been at my first gig,
That's fantastic.
but hadn't been back since. Some of them had been to loads, and some of them had been to a handful, but some had only ever been to that first one. So to kind of show them, look where I'm at now, look at how I've grown in a way, was really lovely. Everybody laughed. There were improvised moments. Some of the written stuff went down really, really well. And I tried things that I'd never even tried at gigs before. Like I did like a little voiceover thing that was meant to be I think it was my conscience or something like that. I was a lot more physical, but because I knew I had half an hour, the pacing was a lot better than it had ever been at like a 10 spot or a 5 spot. Because I feel like you try and cram, well, I try and cram too much in just 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 15. So to have half an hour, I really kind of had this nice pace to everything, and everyone had a really nice night. I got some good feedback from the 2 comedians, and I got a lot of good feedback from my friends.
That's so good.
But I haven't done anything like that since, because I never took it anywhere. I didn't take it to any festivals or anything like that.
You still
now
can?
No, I do plan to. I've got that half hour and probably a little bit more to add on to it now. So probably at least a 45 minutes, which sometimes when I'm doing a 10 and I run out of stuff to say, I think, how have I actually got 45 minutes somewhere if I'm struggling to fill a 10? But again, it's that pacing issue. Maybe I've just rushed it. As for my worst gig,
and then if you're gonna tell me, please do.
So somebody invited me along to what they called guerrilla stand-up comedy.
Right.
And for some reason, we chose to do stand-up comedy on the Central Line on a Saturday afternoon.
Right.
Now, obviously, it's not ideal because, like, your audience is either joining late or they're leaving early because everyone's got somewhere to go. But we just got on unannounced. Hello, everybody. We're here to do some stand-up comedy. We don't want any money, but we just want to tell you our jokes. And instantly we saw the British public just go, just don't look at us. Don't talk to us. Don't look at us. We don't want you here. But we persevered. We carried on. We each took turns. At one point, someone came up to give us £1, and we were like, "Oh no, we're not taking any money." He said, "If I give you this £1, will you stop?"
Wow. Oh,
we were really like, "Okay, we're gonna get off. We're gonna get off at the next stop." But then we went back the other direction, and we tried again. But you know what? The 10 gigs or so following that, I felt fearless. I really did.
It won't be.
I think maybe 5 gigs after doing that was the first time I beat King Gong. So because I just went on and thought, do you know what? These 400 people here are nowhere near as scary as the 30 people in that carriage.
Yeah. Mind you.
So yeah, kind of.
Having said that, comedy on a tube is not a bad idea. It's just implementing it, because there is a comedy night on a bus, And
Oh,
infamously in Edinburgh, there is a giant bus that you can go and watch comedy on. There's one in London as well.
yeah, I've done I think was it called Night Bus Comedy
Oh yeah, yeah,
in Wood Green. That's a
yeah,
lovely
yeah,
gig. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
really
That's right.
lovely gig.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's is that Nicole Harris's, I think.
It is. Yeah, one of
Yeah.
my faves. Yeah.
Oh, she's
Yeah.
brilliant. She's been on here. She's absolutely wonderful. And it's wonderful about your birthday gig because I had a surprise 50th birthday gig at Always Be Comedy, and which is the regular club I go to, and I went up and everybody sang me happy birthday in the audience and everything, and there was a settee on stage, and they ploughed me with Guinness all night and birthday cakes, and then we had Phil Wang and Matt Ford came on and did a routine. And
Oh,
then
fantastic.
it was amazing. And then I stood up by popular demand and sang one of my infamous songs. And of course, the joke is I can't sing a note.
It's
And
a
especially when
good joke.
I'm
It's a good joke. It's a good joke. Yeah. Write that down. Write that down.
everybody joined in. It was amazing. Anyway,
Hmm.
how do you cope with any nerves before you go on stage? Do you get nervous at all?
Yeah. I I think I eventually learned to not fight it
Right.
and kind of ride it because I can't remember who said it to me, but someone said to me that in fact it might have been an interview that I watched with Lee Evans once where he said nerves are good because it means you still care.
Yeah.
And I kind of carried that with me. So if I felt myself getting nervous, I instead of thinking, oh my God, I'm nervous, I think, oh phew, I still give it a crap, you know? So
Yeah. He's
um
he's exactly right because
yeah,
if you weren't nervous and you just went on blasé, you wouldn't be fully ready
yeah,
to perform. I don't think. Yeah. Sorry
yeah.
for
And it's
interrupting.
it kind of no, it kind of fits in with you're probably aware of Millikan's law.
Mm.
You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
that idea that no matter how the gig goes, you've got until 11 o'clock the next day to
Yeah.
dwell on it. And I think the interesting part of that is if you've smashed it the night before, you still have to let go.
Yeah.
Because if you walk on with that energy, it's going to go just as badly as if you're walking on with the energy of, oh, I died on my ass last night. Um, so yeah, I think something about how you present is very important. And I mean, I did learn to not let the nerves show. There are certain things like I have literally just as they're about to say my name and as they're saying my name, I close my eyes and I take a deep breath and I hold it for about 8 seconds and
Wow.
then I walk on. Um, and it's kind of a miniature meditation in a way.
That's
So
amazing.
that helps me to hide the nerves, but I don't I'm also not fighting them.
It's
And
interesting.
I know it sounds weird, but
No, no,
yeah, it's
no, not
both.
at all. Not at all. It's interesting because my favorite actor was always Jack Lemmon. I thought he was brilliant. And he infamously would say before he rehearsed on a movie set, he would close his eyes and say magic time. And then he would be that was it. And so it's fascinating because everybody's got their own rituals. Um,
That's what I do before sex. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, there you are. Would you say that as soon as you walk on stage or as soon as you get your first laugh, the nerves go?
Um, again, I don't know whether it's because of having a mood disorder, but I'm very much determined by the energy of the audience. So
Yeah, yeah.
if I win them over, it's smooth sailing, and I'm in the right mind frame. I'm in the right zone. I'm giving off the right energy. But if they don't like me straight away, I can either sink or paddle it back
Yeah,
in a,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
well, again, that's
um
experience.
I think, yeah, even though I'm quite relatively experienced, I still can lose it in that first 30 seconds, like when I was brand new.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not all. I'm not going to blame that all on mood disorder. Some of that is sometimes lack of preparation.
Sure.
Sometimes that is, I don't know. Sometimes it's just life is going on in the background as well. So yeah,
You need me in more of your gigs because I'm the
yeah, for
most
sure,
enthusiastic person
exactly.
you can
I
have.
need I need a sofa and loads of Guinness and a sing song.
Well, there we are.
Really, I just wanted to be a karaoke star, but yeah, there's not enough of those
I once
opportunities.
tried that, and I sang "Bring Me Sunshine," of course, Morecambe and Wise, and it
Of
actually
course.
it cleared the pub. But there you go.
So that means it's just easier to get to the bar. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah. How
Got to see
how
the positives in everything.
exactly? There's always a positive, always a positive. How do you remember all your routines? Do you have them? Do you have them in your head? Pointers? Do you write notes? How do you remember it all?
For me, actually writing things on paper works the best.
Hmm.
Um, and repetition. I I can I can go blank sometimes. It This is definitely a mood disorder thing, but if I'm kind of in a hypermania place, I've got so many thoughts going around in my head, I can quite easily forget this 5 minute or 10 minute routine. Um, so if I know I'm feeling that way, I will write stuff on my hand, although I prefer not to. But I find it's what's a weird thing is if I've written it down on a piece of paper and it's in my back pocket, or if it's on my hand, I don't ever need to refer to it. The
It's
fact
like
that
it's
I've
blocked.
written it and it's there, I
Yeah.
can see it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
repetition
it's
and actually writing
reassuring.
with
Yeah.
yeah. But writing it on with pen and paper is definitely one of my
Yeah.
things. If I've written it out digitally, I need to transfer that to pen and paper if it's gonna actually stick.
Yeah, yeah. One of the most creative things I've ever done, apart from the blog and the podcast, was write a play. I wrote and appeared in a play which we put on for comic relief, and
Brilliant.
the play's called The Applicant. This was years ago, and it was basically about I've got a very successful girlfriend in London, and I came down from Carlisle, and I've never had a job interview. I'm coming down to live with her. I've never had a job interview. So each of the scenes was me in the waiting room, then the job interview, me in the waiting room, job interview. So I look around in the audience, and I'm very nervous as hell, and I start a monologue. So I'm creating the story. So my mate's very good at accents. He played all the interviewers. There was me doing the story. So I ran out the first night. We did three of them, and I ran out the first night. I was like a rabbit in headlights, and I had 6 pages of monologue. And after 10 weeks of rehearsal, I fucking forgot it.
It's just typical, isn't
I'm
it?
standing
Yeah.
there thinking, I just want to go home. What was interesting was as soon as my friend come on, we could banter off each other, and I managed to get the best joke in, which was his name.
Yeah.
My character's name was Norman Oliver Hope because of all the rejection letters, dear N.O. Hope. And we genius, you know. But the show 2 and show 3, I didn't put a foot wrong. So it was fascinating. All I needed was an audience, you know.
Yeah.
And I suppose the question that stems off that is that's acting because it's a play. Do you think it's the same for comedy, or because you have to painstakingly learn it, but I suppose you've got the audience as a backup if you go off kilter and come back again? Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. In a weird way, they are your audience and your co-actor in a
Yeah.
way. You you have to bounce off them. And
Mo-
it's something I learned in the clowning classes,
yeah,
because
yeah,
a lot of the work was just first of all, don't cover yourself up. So so many people do this when they're talking, and
I'm doing
even
it
like you,
now.
yeah, yeah. But you might cross your legs unconsciously, or all these things. But the other thing was accept the death. So we would be forced to try something out of nothing.
Yeah,
And if it didn't work, instead of being like, okay, next, she'd make us stay there. She'd make us stay in the moment. She'd make us make eye contact. She wouldn't let us hide ourselves, even though that was the moment we wanted to. And something funny would come. And weirdly, it was when I started to remember that I started to be more comfortable with a joke not working, because sometimes, like the initial, when I was in the beginning, the initial kind of response to that is, oh, quick, rush on, move to the next joke, say something that is going to make them laugh. But actually, if you stay there for a minute, just
yeah,
look at them and sort of be like, make a face and
yeah, yeah,
be almost happy that it didn't work.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You're gonna get a positive response out of them, and then that's when you can move on to your next joke, because you've got to laugh. Okay, the actual joke didn't work, but you've shown them you can be funny even when you're not funny. And
the,
so
the, the,
it's those learning curves, but again, that comes with confidence,
yeah, yeah.
which comes from experience usually.
The two comedians that immediately come to mind with talking about what you're saying are Lloyd Griffith and Hal Cruttenden. They are
Yeah,
superb at delivering gags that either fly or don't fly, or give the impression that they don't fly. They know exactly what they're doing. And
yeah, yeah,
I mean, for example, Lloyd Griffith's going on tour next year, so I'm seeing a lot of work in progress doing. So he has a notebook on a table, and he'll go bum 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 bum, tell a joke, and then there'll be silence. If there's silence, he's brilliant at just going, huh, and then looking down and moving on the next one, and you're laughing at the reaction to him. And that's
yeah.
exactly. And Hal Crittenden's very similar. He's very good with the delivery at the end of it, and it's a fascinating technique.
Yeah, I mean, there are I think one of the top jokes of the Fringe this year, they only printed one line of what was actually a three-line joke.
Yeah,
And the purpose of the first two lines was to get groans. And then the third line, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Messiah Graham's Titanic joke.
yeah,
And it was actually
no.
the third line was the intended big laugh. And that to me has always been like, that's fantastic writing, because
Yeah,
it's not just writing something, it is anticipation, and it's building, and it's almost tricking, it's being like a trickster.
yeah, yeah.
It's almost like Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream, being playful, and you know,
Good
uh
analogy. Yeah, 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 yeah,
you think you know what's going on, but actually the trickster reveals all at the end. And yes,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I've loved this. The wonderful thing about being on the circuit is you if you're a fan of comedy, you get to watch as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you get to
Very, very
learn
much
from
so. The,
from
the
from your peers. Yeah.
the different styles are amazing. I mean, yeah, they where do you begin? Because as I said at the top, I've seen over 1,000. There are so many vying for your time, and so I
Hmm.
do try and see as much as I can. And the styles are absolutely amazing. Another thing about the blog is watching the comedians grow, because I list every venue I see them in. You can see their act developing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Infamously, 25 years ago, Harry Hill, I saw him at downstairs at the King's Head before he was famous, and he brushed past me. He was late for the gig, and he jumped up on stage and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry I'm late. I had to have a testicle brought down." And there was a pause and a laugh, and then he said, "From Derby," and it was the best line I've ever heard to a gig. And 25
Again,
years later, when I met him, I told him this. And he went, Rich, he said, I still tell that to this day. So it's
I
still.
can I can hear him delivering that joke weirdly. I can
So good.
I can hear it. I mean, some of my jokes are kind of that same style.
Yeah.
Pause, get an applaud, and then finish the line
There's always
as if to be
a
like,
tail.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I
So
love that. Yeah.
maybe I'm more influenced by him than I thought.
He's so good. He's influenced a lot. Let's move on. I've just come back from my 17th Edinburgh Fringe, which
Fucking
is
hell.
incredible.
Do you need therapy? Are you all right?
Well, I needed 2 weeks off. I was shattered, but I saw 32 shows in 6 days, which was just bonkers. But
Yeah.
but it's amazing. Um, uh, so I go there every year for my holiday. It's my holiday, and I'm also going around other wonderful fringes as well. I love to go to comedy festivals. Tell me about your experience of Edinburgh or comedy fringes. Have you performed at any? Have you been as a punter? What do you think of them in general?
Um, Weirdly, quite shortly before I started comedy, I went to Brighton Fringe. I was in Brighton at the time of Brighton Fringe, and I caught a couple shows up there. But one of the shows, can't remember what the show was called. It was two ladies, and they're really really funny. I think it was called Laughing Fillies for Laughing Horse or something like
Right.
that. But one of the comedians was really workshopping her show for Edinburgh. She was
Yeah.
very open. You know, she had loads of jokes, loads of material, but some of them she was like openly workshopping. And she had this joke. So this will date the experience. I think Bin Laden had just been found. They just raided his bunker. And her joke was about the books that they found in his bunker. And she was like, what books would they have been? You know, I like to think they would have found some really, really funny books. So she asked the audience to shout out books. And I shouted out the Very Hungry Caterpillar. And she like the audience laughed and she wrote it down. And there was almost like a little, oh, that was good. I like that feeling. But then it didn't happen maybe for another, what that would have been in maybe April or May. And I did my first gig, I think that year in the October maybe or something like that. Or maybe even a year later. I'm not even sure of the timings of those things. But it was definitely like an itch. I haven't been to Edinburgh. Just if I'm honest, I've just never been able to afford it. I've got a young family. I have applied for Best in Class, and in the last one I did get shortlisted, but didn't make the final set of
Congratulations.
people.
That's fantastic.
I think it's true. That's what the email said. So it could just be very kind way to say no to people, but yeah, I think that's probably my best option. I do want to go next year, but I might have to go for Camden or maybe Brighton.
Yeah. There are
'Cause
Leicester's very good in February, and so
yeah, do you know what it is? I always miss the times when you're meant to be booking, when you're meant to be
right.
finding.
Yeah.
Well,
you've got
and
you
also, will I be able to get the annual leave and all of these things? They all come into it. Also, my birthday and my son's birthday is right at the beginning of August, so I
second.
yeah. Oh, really? So he's the 4th and I'm the 7th of August. Yeah. happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
But I have done a Camden Fringe. I did a triple bill with Jake Pickford and Pete White.
Oh, superb. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Well, Pete White is hilarious. Yeah.
They're some of my favorite people in general, not even in comedy. I love those guys. We put on a show called Comedy Buds. because we're all friends, and we may have been referencing the old Wacky Backy at the time.
I used to go to
But
the Savoy Tap a lot, and Pete White was always on the bill there, and he'd do 10 minutes. And
yeah,
he once showed me his notebook of jokes, which was just words. It was extraordinary.
oh, it's crazy. I love a bit of Pete White.
Yeah, yeah,
Weirdly, Jake and I, especially during that time when we were doing the previews together and things like that, and we were trying to get on bills together, we had this game that we would play that when Pete was on, we would we would mouth like mime his jokes. So that, and then once we did a preview that Pete couldn't make, so Jake and I just did some of his jokes in his absence because we knew them off the back of our hands, you know, like
yeah,
yeah. But yeah, no, fantastic guys. Pete, actually, I ran a gig at the Savoy Tap for a little while. That's where I did that birthday gig at the Savoy
yes,
Tap.
yeah. It's a wonderful room.
But thanks to Jimmy Bird, who used to run Birdies there, he put my name forward to sort of take over running a gig there for a while. So that was, yeah.
Is it still happening, or did it not?
I know that my friend David Ferguson was doing Best Friend comedy there.
Right.
I'm not. I again, I've been so out of the loop lately. I'm not quite sure what's going on with that at the moment. Yeah.
Today, what's been your comedy highlight?
It was when I used to run my own gigs. Honestly, I've done some club gigs. I've beat gongs here and there.
Yes.
I've been out of the country for comedy, but definitely running gigs week in, week out was a real privilege, because I gained a new piece of my performance from being an MC. But also I met so many more people because I used to gig so sporadically. I wouldn't get to know everybody.
Yeah.
But when you run a gig, everybody messages you. So my network grew, and again, I made actual friends out of running a gig. When I ran a gig at South Kent Comedy, I did Saturday afternoon slot.
Yeah.
And some weeks I would bring my kids down because it was 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
So my kids would be in the room while I was doing comedy, which felt like a privilege. But then there'd be other times where they weren't there, and we'd book onto the evening show. We'd finish at 4. We'd have a few drinks and then do the evening show. Usually a little bit worse for wear, but yeah, all together. And yeah, no, definitely.
Is it still up and running, or?
My gigs are not, but South Kent Comedy definitely is. Yeah.
Well, if you ever have a comedy night again, do let me know, and I'll get a load of friends to come along with me, and we'll get an audience for you.
Brilliant.
Would you say that comparing is better than doing a solo routine? I know you've explained that you meet more friends and everything through comparing, but do you prefer that, or?
I feel like there's less pressure.
Right.
I'm a little bit looser as an MC than as when I'm doing a spot.
Yeah.
But I feel like it is a really good question.
Thanks.
I know that my wife prefers to watch me MC.
Right.
She said watching my set is too formulaic. She said I've got a tone of voice when I'm doing a set that's not there when I'm MCing, which is great feedback.
It is.
And when I started talking to her again after 7 weeks, I'm messing. No,
Very
but I thought it was really good feedback because it's not something that I would necessarily have noticed
yeah,
myself.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, I like emceeing, but at the same time, you're at work all night.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
You kind of you can't just like, oh, here I am. I'm gonna have a drink and enjoy the rest of the show. I've got to constantly be looking at
But the
my
on the ball,
watch.
wouldn't you? Yeah,
Yeah, you've got you kind of you're more in charge of the audience than everybody else.
yeah.
You kind of not got to mess up the energy for the rest of the acts that are coming on as well, which I've I've done sometimes. Be like, oops, there goes the energy. Let's bring on the next act. Um,
Yeah,
but but I like doing spots as well because again, you 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 set out your set list. You go up, you try it. I feel like I notice more growth when I'm gigging, doing spots, but I like the freedom of being an MC. I like you just I kind of I'm more I'm definitely closer to just Danny Walsh as an MC
sure,
than I am as Danny Walsh doing a spot.
sure. And following on from that, do you have any ambitions as a comedian? Would you like to be on TV? Would you like a quiz show? Would you like to expand more as a comic, like go on a tour or anything like that? I'm expecting yes to all these answers.
It's
All these
it's I think the low bar is just not to die alone.
no.
Um,
No.
but that is where that is whether as a comedian or not. But I am
Yeah.
married, so fingers crossed.
Yes.
It's looking good.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, who wouldn't love all of that stuff?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've always said, um, if comedy can even partly supplement my day job, money. I mean, money wise, I hate when money comes into it at all. But I mean, ultimately, doing it was a dream for a long time. So from my first gig onwards, that was already my ambition.
Yeah.
Just be a comedian. But yeah, once you start on the circuit and a lot of the people I started out with are on telly now. Loads of people I started out with have been signed. Um, People have got successful TikToks. People have got successful podcasts. Um, I think, okay, I'm going to answer as a dreamer, not as a boring old fart. I think, I think I'd love to be in a writing room.
Right.
Whether it's for my own project or someone else's, I'd love to be in a writing room as part of my job. I'd love to be at least a semi-pro comedian where it pays some of the bills, or at least it's spending money and my day job covers the bills. But yeah, I'd love to be on. I'd love to be on telly for it. I'd love for it to take me around the world. If you could do like the Montreal Festival.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a dream that would be. I mean,
TV
even just to
sitcom as
be in
well.
rooms.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sitcoms. I'd love to do a sitcom. I wrote one recently with a non-comedian friend.
Yeah.
He's got drama writing background. He reached out to me and we've written a pilot and we've planned out the whole season. We've sent over the pilot and like the sort of show Bible, as it were.
It's
We've sent
fantastic.
that out to a few people, and as it stands, we've actually had some notes from an executive producer.
Oh,
But
that's brilliant.
that's obviously the dream was someone's going to pick it up, and now our lives are going to change, and all this. But actually, so many people don't even get the notes back. So I'm really proud of it, and we're planning on with a little bit of time and money that could be afforded to us. We're planning on just filming the pilot ourselves next year.
You
So
should definitely do it, and you should
yeah, we're
definitely
gonna.
do it. Look at the success of Starstruck with Rose
Hmm.
Matafeo, who's
Hmm.
wonderful, and look at the success of Buffering, Ian Sterling and Steve Bujega.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
two
yeah,
have
and
been
even
massive successes.
Tom Little
Yes, yeah,
has one recently. I've seen a
yeah,
few clips of that, and it looks fantastic.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
got one of my favorites from the very beginning. He was one of my first MCs, Lenny Sherman.
Oh,
Um,
superb. What a
yeah,
lovely
he
man. He's so good.
really brilliant,
He's been
really
on
brilliant.
point for
Yeah,
us to do this. He's
yeah,
such a good bloke, that man.
yeah.
And the other thing as well is that another reason why I do the blog, I never make any money out of it. As soon as I make money, it's going to be a business. It's not a business, it's a passion. I'm there to support everybody. I think it's a whole unique take because it's never been done from an audience point of view. And what
Mm,
is not to love? Because comedy is such a joyous art. And it's given me an enormous amount of confidence sitting on the front row and laughing at you all. So well done.
mm, yeah.
You know, that's the selling point of the blog over. But I'm so delighted with the success of it and the success of comedy in general in Britain because it's such a joyous thing, as I say. What's not to love?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, let's move on to online gigs. Have you done any online gigs at all?
No. In lockdown, I was still living with my kids at the time.
Right.
Um, and yeah, lockdown just took over. Me and their mum were just completely overtaken with, you
Yeah.
know, looking after them, cooking, cleaning, teaching, trying to keep the family sane, which we were kind of successful at. I think me and her lost our minds more than they did.
Gosh.
But but yeah, that's I just didn't have I just didn't have it in me. Weirdly, in the same period of time, I joined a group of comedians who were doing Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
and I managed to do I think 3 sessions before I realized that I can't do this without being disturbed or having the time to do it, and so eventually I just I put my character into like a permanent meditative state in a cave somewhere. And then I think Rob Dan, who was the dungeon master,
Yeah.
he eventually had the character fly off on a unicorn.
Like you
So
do.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Online comedy is interesting because obviously during lockdown it was a horrible time and nobody had a clue. But when it was done well, it was better than nothing. And I know that
Hmm.
might
Hmm.
sound cheap, but certainly when it first started, there was no audio at all. So I would laugh at the comedians and they wouldn't be able to hear me. So people were knocking on the walls, going, "Who the hell is that?" And I was being taken away and everything.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
once
yeah.
the audio was opened up, the comedians could time the jokes, and they were getting better and better and better.
It
However,
was a great. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
no,
Go
no, no,
on.
no, no, no. Please, you carry on. It was a great one.
It was a great time to see the innovation, the creativity,
Yeah,
because when things kind of slowly opened up and you were allowed this or you were allowed that, it
yeah,
was great to see what some people were doing. Like there was somebody who did it in the middle of like his his flats so
yeah,
that people could watch from the windows.
yeah,
Some people did it in their back gardens, some people did it on their roofs, and like it was just like it
it
was
was
great to see
bonkers.
that in
Yeah, yeah,
that innovation going on for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. But getting back to live when everything opened up again, everybody was so relieved because
Mm.
in a live environment, the wonderful thing about it is it's in the moment. So you just do not know what's going to happen. And that's the
Yeah,
magic
yeah,
of it.
yeah, yeah.
I love to go out on a Thursday or a Friday or a Saturday normally when I go. and there's a group of comedians on, I have a few beers, I sit down with my friends and I go, right, entertain me. And it's just the incredible memories that I've got of 50 years, and the majority of it being like just extraordinary. Talking of age, did you have comedy growing up? Who are your favorite comedians, past and present?
I think my very first favorite was Lee Evans.
Oh,
But my nan and granddad, I mean, I also loved Lily Savage when I was growing
yeah.
up. Um,
God bless him.
but
Yeah.
again, a lot of sitcoms
Yeah.
were my favorites. Like Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, Father Ted. A lot of those old sitcoms were my beginnings of comedy. But I do remember sitting by the living room door. My mum would be watching Lee Evans, and she'd hear me laughing and then be like, "All right, come in. You're meant to be in bed." And I'd sit and watch it with her. And
Right.
what I found recently in, I don't know whether it's blogs or stories or people introducing themselves or what, but I found that's a really common thing. That happened to a lot of us. Yeah, a lot of us did the exact same thing as a kid, sat by the door to watch the stand up, to watch the funny people. But yeah, I think of the I used to love Richard Pryor,
Yeah.
Robin Williams, one of my old favorites. Just the energy of the man. And again, I actually first came across him in Mork and Mindy.
Yeah.
And then he was on telly doing stand up, and I knew stand up, and I was like, oh, I didn't know he did this, and then it just grew. Eddie Murphy, Raw and Delirious are just, I think all time classics, along with some of Richard Pryor's best work. But as teenagers, me and my friends used to watch a lot of the Def Comedy Jams. So there's a lot of American comedians from that I knew. Like I knew Dave Chappelle from there long before he became even Chappelle's Show. Before he'd been on his own sitcoms, I knew him from, and I think he was only like 18 when he first started those. But he had this routine about being a Domino's delivery driver in Washington, D.C., and it was like the most dangerous job in the world or something like that. And I just loved his way. I liked Ricky Harris from there. Brilliant. There was a comedian called Hamburger.
Who just
Hamburger.
He played Edinburgh, and it was a sellout.
I bet he was hilarious, but also Bernie Mac, the late great Bernie Mac. Stir it like motherfucking coffee, man. There were some excellent comedians on those DVDs, and there were so many of those DVDs that we could just watch them like over the course of years of growing up together and just see so many different acts. But some of my favorites now, my favorites, I think my two favorites are Maria Bamford.
Oh, brilliant.
And I mean, still Dave Chappelle. I know he's controversial. I don't agree with everything he says, but I think in the same way you should hold your friends to account, but you still love them. You know, you don't just stop being friends with someone when they're wrong. You kind of hope that they get better. But again, I've been a fan of his since I was.
That's brilliant.
Like 12 or 13 years old or something like that. So, but again, a lot of my favorites are people that I've grown with on the circuit. So you've got your, I love Fatia El Ghori. I love her. Esther Manito, Matt Rouse, Stephen Catlin, Ali Woods, Nicole Harris, Darren Griffiths, Laura Smith. Oh, this could go on forever. Michael
Loads and loads.
Akadiri,
Yeah.
um, uh, Pete Refanasi,
Yes.
Luke Craig.
Yeah.
Again, just could just
Goes
go on
on and
forever
on and
and
on.
ever and ever. Yeah, yeah. So
My
I think people are gonna notice anyone that I haven't named rather than who I have, but they're like, I just I just haven't written it down on pen and paper. That's why I can't remember.
don't worry. What a list,
That's
my friend.
that's
That's
that, but
amazing.
that's a callback. The pen and paper thing. That's a
My
callback.
first ever comedian that I saw on holiday, aged 7 or 8, was Les Dawson. It was just
Wow.
incredible. And then a year later, we saw Tommy Cooper. And then I started writing down every single act that I saw, and that developed into the spreadsheet. I've seen just about everybody. There's a section in my blog called "The Ones That Got Away," and I've written 25 of them. Top of the tree was Morecambe and Wise. That's the reason why I love comedy. I mean, they have so many memories, but I never saw
Mm.
them live. I wish I had. I've got so many books behind me about loads of comedians, but particularly them. I've seen plays and all the rest of it. When I first came down to London from Carlisle, I went to the Comedy Store, and on the bill was John Maloney, Phil Jupitus, Hattie Hayridge, Linda Smith, God bless her. She was wonderful. And top of the tree was a comedian called Charles Fleischer, who was never heard of again. And he did voiceovers and wacky stuff. And about a month later, he recorded, he was the voice of Roger Rabbit, and he was never heard of
Wow.
again. So it was just incredible.
What,
And I thought,
what a legend. What a legend. Please.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just amazing.
Love him.
But I've
I
yeah,
have a little caveat, someone I forgot.
yes, yeah.
Um, May Martin is a fantastic
Oh,
comedian, but I have a special place in my heart for May Martin because, again, quite by accident, I got invited to May Martin and Friends at the Moth Club, uh, by the lady who went on to become my wife.
oh, wonderful.
Um, and I only got invited because the friend that was supposed to go with her dropped out. But we
Right.
had this wonderful first date at May Martin and Friends.
Oh, congratulations. That's brilliant.
We were kind of, she was like, oh, it's fate. I'm inviting a comedian to a stand-up show. And I kind of thought, oh, this is a weird first date. I can remember all the people that I've mocked for bringing people to a comedy club on their first date because you can't chat, you've just got to watch. But we met a little bit before the show. We had a couple of drinks. We had a good chat before the show started, and we just, even by the end of that first night, we kind of already had in jokes that kind of
Yeah,
stayed.
yeah.
And we saw some fantastic comedians that night. But yeah, May Martin, special place
That's
in my
that's
heart, just
that's
just just
wonderful.
just because of love. Yeah,
Exactly. My
yeah.
my favorite American comedian has always been Steve Martin. I've been a
Oh,
fan since I was young,
fantastic. Yeah,
and I
yeah.
saw him with his bluegrass band at Hammersmith Apollo, and the band was
Yes, I
brilliant.
remember the gig.
Yeah, but then he did some comedy as well. It was just extraordinary, and all the shows
Yeah,
Martin Short he does now. Uh,
yeah,
I had a ticket, but it had to be cancelled for COVID. They were going to do the Royal Albert Hall, and I
yeah, yeah.
again. But the run of films with Carl Reiner were extraordinary, and there's so many happy memories of him. Then I can remember seeing Peter Kay in a club in Manchester before he was famous. He was fourth on the bill, and I laughed so hard I missed the fifth act. I said to my mate, he's going to be a superstar. McIntyre as well in a hut in Edinburgh. So many of them
Yeah, yeah,
developed,
yeah, yeah.
and now, I mean, take your pick. There are so many great comedians that I just absolutely cry with laughter at, and I should insure this laugh, I'm telling you.
No.
Following on from that, like me, have you or do you like to go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
I mean, kind of. Like I say, we've we've been back to the Moth Club a couple of times since then.
Yeah,
And I try and keep an eye out on who's touring and who's coming in. And if it is someone who is like, one of my ultimate faves, who I feel like if if I didn't see them and then God forbid they're to pass away, who would I be gutted? I really try and go.
yeah,
But not as much as I'd like, especially not as much to circuit gigs. Because they're way more accessible. They're way, you know what I mean? You can get to a lot of them. They're free. You just maybe pay a little bit at the end for some of them. But then obviously they're the ones you pay in front. But it's just, I blame my job really. My job, it's a big reason why I've taken a sort of hiatus
right.
recently from actually gigging, is because it's a very emotionally demanding job. And so
Sure.
by the time 5 o'clock is done, I just feel like I just need to get home. I just feel empty
They
socially.
are long days
Um
when you've got full on jobs.
yeah. But
What
it's
aggravation.
I don't know whether it's, I mean, there's probably similar industries that feel the same,
Yeah,
but it's working with vulnerable people
sure.
that that are kind of, sometimes they could either be really engaged or not so engaged. You might have to do a lot of chasing for them.
Yeah.
But also, this week I've had 4 child protection conferences
Oh dear.
for clients, and I'm not even like a child protection social worker. I'm a drug and alcohol worker.
Yeah,
But the nature is that a lot of people with addictions have social workers involved, and their
yeah,
kids are maybe children in need, or those sorts of things. And these are very, very heavy core groups and like meetings. And so, yeah, by the end of even that meeting, I'm spent. So,
it's in,
yeah, I definitely don't get out to as many as I'd like to.
it's interesting you say that because it is obviously a very demanding and very exhausting job that you do, but very, I can imagine, very rewarding. But having the comedy as an aside for you, I suppose in a way balances it out a bit, and
Yeah.
you get a chance to go and do it.
Well, what's interesting is I've been longing for it recently,
Yeah,
to gig, even just to be at gigs, just to be
sure.
hanging around with comedians, just to, um so as much as I do enjoy my job,
Yeah,
um sometimes I don't remember that I enjoy it until I'm at home.
yeah,
um
yeah.
while it's happening, not so much. Kind
Sure.
of like a massage. You think,
Yeah.
oh, I really want a massage, and then while you're having it, you're like, this woman is gonna break my neck. But then afterwards you feel kind of relieved and relaxed. That's how I feel about my job.
Wow, that's
But
great.
yeah, I've been longing for comedy, so I am trying my best to get some gigs back in the diary. I think I'm gonna host a couple coming up, and I've got 1 or 2 spots in the diary coming up. Um,
Please let me
so
know.
yeah,
Please let me know when you're doing the hosting and the solo stuff, and I'll definitely want to come and see you again soon.
I appreciate that,
Front
Rich.
row, my
Appreciate
friend.
that.
I've much enjoyed talking to you. You've been a fantastic guest. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Are you doing any podcasts? Have you got any time for that? What's your social
Uh,
media or anything like that?
I've got one in the pipeline, a podcast.
Right.
It's not like other podcasts that I've seen. A couple of people just chatting, current events kind of things. This one has a theme. Stephen Catlin and I have been working on the idea probably now for about 2 years, but our diaries just have never aligned enough. And we're finally in the process of now making it happen. And he's just had a fantastic Edinburgh, so he's kind of recovering, is recovering a bit from that. But it is called Folklore and Disorder.
Right. Great.
And we're kind of talking gods and monsters and myths and legends, and there's going to be a part of that where we just deep dive into, you know, let's say Anubis, or I think our planned first episode is Anubis.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, knowing like with Catlin, I can't see how it wouldn't become something where a costume is involved.
Well, I was going to say that.
I think people would be disappointed if it's just like, wait, what just happened? Stephen Catlin literally just talked about Anubis and didn't put a jackal head on. Why?
I've seen him many times wandering around comedy festivals in costume. He stands out like there's no tomorrow. And the wonderful thing is he is my next guest on the podcast.
Oh, fantastic. Well, hopefully by the time this comes out, hopefully we will have done at least one podcast episode. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting because we get on great, and we've got two very different ways of looking at the world.
Sure.
But we're aligned in that interest of the kind of, you know, the occultish kind of legends and myths and the wonderful and weird. But ultimately, what people will come to learn of me is I'm a hokey cokey comedian. I am constantly in, out, and shaking it all about.
Well, as I say, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. What's your social media? Where can people find you?
On Instagram at Danny Walsh Comedy. I've got clips on there, but you're not going to get daily content. But if you want to see some clips that I've done and maybe some upcoming gigs, that's where to go.
Well, brilliant. As I say, I'm looking forward very much to seeing you very soon back in the comedy world, in the comedy world at a gig. And thank you so much for your time tonight, and all the very best to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I'll get you a Guinness next time we see each other.
You're a good man. Thank you very much, my friend. All the best.
Take care.